Hello, everybody, and welcome today to our presentation, Chapter 11, Project Procurement Management for the successful passing for your PMP exam. Today, we're going to be looking throughout the chapter about how to define the project procurement management, what are the phases that are used in procurement management, the role of the procurement manager, as well the difference in between the buyer and the seller in terms of procurement, right? What does the buyer rule and what is description being given? A seller, who is the seller and what does he does, right? We're going to teach you as well throughout the presentations and the course how to answer the procurement questions, right? The rule of the project management in a procurement process, right? Whether in a centralized or a decentralized environment, in the types of contracting environment, whether you're using time and material, fixed price contracts, lump sum, or the cost reimbursable under its types, and the types of the fixed price or the purchase order. As well, we're going to be looking on the procurement process group, right? Identifying the procurement management plan, statement of work, procurement statement of work, identifying the procurement statement of work, and the contract types, the trade-off between contracts from the buyer point of view, contract types, advantage and disadvantage, risks among the contractors, contract terms, and identifying the source collection. As well, we're going to be looking on the categories of the terms and conditions, right, of a contract and its special provisioning. As again, we're going to look on the waivers and the special provisions of a contract and when we can change the special provisioning. Types of non-competitive forms of procurement, identifies ways of how to select the seller proposal, how to perform a selection, project selection source for the seller, how to perform a weighting score, identifying the different methods of negotiation tactics, the main items that should be able to negotiate during a contract, or we call it under the contract provision, purpose of the contract, and how to take an as well. We're going to teach you how to fill a procurement plan, right? How to review a contract and how to simulate those contracts and how to review the situation questions that will be asked during the exam. So let's start. First of all, the project procurement management, it is about the processes, right, that you're able to determine whether I should purchase a product or should I build it in home, right? So whether a product, a service, or a result, right? So the project procurement, it includes all the contract management and the change control process and how you're going to administer those contracts during the monitoring control, right? And how the issue, when to issue a purchase order or when to issue a contract, right? So the project procurement management, it is about administering the contract, as we said, in the monitoring control, and that administer the buyer who's outside the organization, who is acquiring a service or a product or a service from a seller, right? And we, as a rule, right, we should be able to administer the contract during the month as a project management during the monitoring control to make sure that the procurer who provides us with the hardware, the servers, or the equipments or the machineries, he had collected his payments right before we close the project and the contract. So you need to know that the planning phase of the procurement occurs during the planning process group. Conducting the procurement, it is going to be undertaken during the execution phase. Administer, as we said, the procurement, right, and the rule of the project manager that goes into the monitor control phase. Closing the procurement and making sure that you fulfill the special provisions, the contract bulletins during the closing phase. So the procurement, it is a formal phase in which in many organizations you obtain goods and service. Now I need you to make sure that you distinguish between a procurement and the purchase. Actually, a purchase and contractuals, they are always under the procurement, right? Procurement, it means I'm procuring a consultant. I'm procuring a company to come and as a joint venture, right, as a subcontractor, right, to perform a certain work to me. But the purchase is like if I need to go and purchase certain items using a purchase order, right? So there's a purchase requisition, and then there's a purchase order being issued accordingly to purchase those items. So the procurement department, it is a department that is used in order to handle and control procurements in most of the companies. So it includes procurement, contracting, purchase, and the legal department. Those are the phases in which include under the procurement and the contracting and the purchase and legal department. So the decisions are being taken, right, when we have a certain project, right? For example, let's say we need to customize an ERP system. Shall we go and buy directly from a center, from a big company, right, who provide, could be like SAP, could be like Oracle, could be like Microsoft, or should we go for a customized application, or we should recruit, right, developers and an analyst and a project manager to build our application, which we can have the source code, right? So we need to make the make or the buy decision, either to procure or either to customize. So once a decision is being taken, whether to procure or you're going to customize, right? So the project management, he needs to build a plan, how it is going to procure, okay? And how the procurement management plan will be included, right? He needs to provide with a description of the work, okay? So the procurement management, right, he needs to determine whether we're gonna go for a request for a proposal, a tender, right? Or we're gonna perform invitation for bid, or we're gonna go for request for quotation, right? Now, in the type of procurement, right, so we have to use a contract type. So whether we're going to go for RFP or we're going to go for invitation for bids, right, we're gonna have to get a contract. And we need to have, right, a way we're gonna be reporting, right, special reports. We're gonna give a status, a progress, a trend report, a forecast report, right? So the procurement statement of work, it combines both the request for proposal and the request for quotation. Now, when we look onto the distinction in between the buyer and the seller, so you know that the buyer is the company or the purchase, all right? A person who purchases a service is known as a buyer. A seller is the person who sells the good and is known as a seller, contractor, subcontractor, or a designer. Okay. Now, when it comes to the tricks into answer certain procurement questions in the PMP exam you're going to be undertaken, you remember, you need to know that contracts that always require formality, right? Always you need to remember all product and the project management requirements for the procurement work, it should be specified, stated in the contract. So it means you cannot work anything that's not in the contract. What's in the contract is what you're gonna be done. What you see is what you're gonna get, right? So if it's not in the contract, it cannot only be done. It's a formal change order and the contract is issued. So if it is in the contract, it must be done. A formal change order must be approved by both parties. So change must be submitted and approved in writing. contracts are being legally binded. Okay, the seller has no choice to perform and agree in the contract. Contracts always they help to diminish project risk, so they're able to waive off the risks whenever there is. So most governments back all the contracts that fall within their jurisdictions by providing a court system for dispute resolution. So today we might have a conflict, right, in between the two parties, the buyer and the seller. So the contract, it might state in one of its special provisions, right, in case if we have, right, a disagreement, so we're going to get a mediator, or we call it an arbitrator, right, who is a third party who tries to solve the problem in between the both sides. If it failed, then we can go to the court to resolve the dispute. Remember that the project management rule in the procurement process, he knows the procurement process, you're able to know what will happen and when. So you need to know that the project management, he knows he must be, we say always a project management wild in a mile and at one deep inch. It means that the project management, right, he knows, right, he should be knowing the procurement process. He should be understanding the contract terms and conditions, okay? So it means that you can read and understand the contract, okay? He should also make sure all the contracts, right, contains all of the scope work. He should be able to include into the procurement process and into the contract, right, the timing to attend for the meetings, the reports, the action, and the communication that's going to be used, and that goes into the communication plan. So he should be able to identify risks and set them into the risk register and the watch list, right, in order to know what are the risks and how to respond to those risks, right. He needs to also help to tailor a contract to unique needs of the project, given in a formal written. He needs to fit the schedule, right. He needs to have a schedule plan, right, and when we're going to deliver those items, when we're going to receive those items, especially if they're being shipped, right. And he needs to be involved into the contract negotiation, and that's a very important. Now, I always do that from my experience with many companies, I always ask the sales management before we sign a contract. I need the initial draft of the contract because there could be any waiver, right, that causes an issue with the contract, right? So we need to take a preventive actions, and we need to change that risky contract waiver or the contract special provision. So protect the integrity of the project and ability to get work done. So that's why we sign always a non-disclosure agreements, right? And as well, when you have a contract, you will be able to have protecting yourself from the integrity of the information that you are withholding. To make sure all the work is done under the contract, okay, such as you perform reporting, you perform inspection, and legal delivery. So you feel free, right? That when you report any confidential data, that you're already under an NDA, right? So you're only reporting to special people, right, to whom they are concerned to collect those informations, right? Remember, do not ask for something that's not in the contract without making a corresponding change to the contract. Always work with the procurement management to manage those changes to the contract. And remember, the project management, he should be assigned right before the contract is being signed, right? So that's very important that the project management to be always there before the contract is being signed. Now, when it comes to contracting environment, remember that you're working your project under a contract, right? In the procurement, you might have what we call a centralized contracting, or might have a decentralized contracting. Remember, centralized contracting, means that the procurement management or the procurement department, they're having a power over the project management. So the project management is being led by the procurement department. But in the decentralized, it is much more better for a project management, right? So the project management, he's the one who has the command in line, right? And the procurement department, right? It follows the project manager for making decisions. Now, in the once you take the chapter with us in a complete presentations, we're going to be exploring all the types of the contracts, right? Whether the fixed price contracts, the fixed price incentive, or the fixed price award fee, or the FPIF, or the fixed price, right, with percentage, right? and as well the fixed price with economical adjustment. Again, when we look onto the post-reimbursable contracts as well, we're going to be looking onto the CPIF, cost price incentive fee, as well the cost price award fee, and the CPPC, the cost percentage, right? And as well, we're going to be looking on calculations, right, for how to calculate the PTA, point of total assumptions, how to calculate the as well the final fee and the final price of the contract, and to whether to make your decisions, right, whether to go for procurement based on mathematical operations or to go for customizing or procuring, right? So I hope that you to continue with us the presentations and the sessions through Academy and SoftClick. You can contact us, right, and we can provide you with the whole course, right, at an affordable price, and make sure 101% you're gonna pass for the first time your PMP, and just not just passing as well, you will teach you how to practically apply the project from expertise that we had in the industry trips. Thank you very much for attending that presentation, right, and having an active listening to it. This is Muhammad Ahmed, Zaki PMO Director and GM of Operations, right, and hope to meet you soon. Thank you very much, and have a nice day. All one.